Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It has been a while since I've done a sit-down video. Very exciting stuff. If you missed it, I've been doing Vlogtober the past month, so yeah, I'll link it up in the cards if you want to go back and watch those videos. Today we are doing a long-awaited book update. It's been a while because I've been reading the ACOTAR series, which we'll get into. Before we begin, yes, I am very fancy for a book video. I've been testing out the Jaclyn Hill X Morphe Divine Neutrals palette. I've been waiting to have a chance to be able to use some of the darker shades, and I finally got the chance. So I took it. So yeah, we're very glammed up for this book review. Also, if you hear noise in the background, my neighbor has taken this time to mow the lawn, so I apologize for that. Anyways, let's get into it. I've got a lot of books to discuss. So like I mentioned, the last time I did a book review was June, July, I'm not exactly sure. This is going back from June, so we got June, July, August, September, October. It's been a while because, like I said, it took me a really long time to get through the Court of Thorns and Roses series, so sorry that it's been a while. Hopefully I can get back into reading a little bit more often. I honestly think that my reading levels probably won't be the same as they were before I started my job, but hopefully they will go back to a higher level. I don't know. Anyways, let's get into the book reviews, starting with The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This book is about a Jewish man named Lael, and he is sent to Auschwitz and he becomes a tattooist. This is adult historical fiction, by the way, if you couldn't guess that by the description. And once Lael gets to Auschwitz, he becomes a tattooist, and he also meets this woman, and he promises her and himself that they are going to survive and that he's going to marry her. So it's also a romance as well. I had very high expectations going into this book because I had heard a lot of good things. I know this book was really popular when it first came out, I think. So yeah, when you hear good things about a book, you kind of expect that you're gonna like it. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed. It didn't live up to the hype for me personally. I really liked Lael's story, and this is based on true events. I also think that the story gave a really good overall view of what it's like to be at Auschwitz, that it doesn't just focus on Lael's story. He also talks a lot about that in Auschwitz there was also prisoners of war, there was also a lot of gypsies and political prisoners and stuff. So I like how it gave kind of a very overall view of what it was like to be in Auschwitz as well. What I found that took away from me is that I didn't really feel connected to the novel. I didn't really feel the emotional bond in between Lael and what's her name? I think it was Gita or Gita. I didn't really feel the love in between them that much, and I thought going into this book that I was gonna sob and I was gonna cry, and I didn't even cry. I just didn't really feel the connection. I think it's because Heather, who's actually a screenwriter by trade, and this is her first actual novel, and I really did feel that when you're writing screenplays and stuff, you have visuals, whether it's film or TV, you have the visual to be able to help build things like emotional connection and atmosphere, and I felt like the book was really missing that. Auschwitz is supposed to be such a scary, fearful place, and I didn't really feel that fear, and I didn't feel that love. So I think it was really the writing that let down the book. Overall, I think it's not a bad book. I still enjoyed it, I still went through it, but I think that there's way better World War II romances out there because this genre is very prolific, and of the ones I've read, this just wasn't the best. I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, this is another book that I read in July. This is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and once again, this is a very hyped up book, very popular on Book Talk. It's just very, very popular book. I will say I liked this book. Took me a while to get into it though. Wasn't until Evelyn's third husband, because she has 7 husbands. It took me a while to get into the book. Oh, I should probably give you the synopsis of the book, that would be helpful. So this is an adult historical fiction. This writer, Monique, gets a chance to do this piece on Evelyn Hugo, who is this super famous Hollywood actress. It kind of follows Evelyn's life from the 50s. She was in show's business from the 50s to the 80s, and it's kind of in current time that Monique is writing about her, and there is a connection, but you don't know it, in between Monique and Evelyn Hugo. So there's kind of like two points of view of Monique and Evelyn, and I think that Monique's point of view really slows down in the beginning because it's really focused on her. So I think that's why I felt like it was a little slow and it took me a little bit of time to get into it. Evelyn is a very complicated character, and I like her character, but I wouldn't necessarily say I like her, if that makes any sense. She's very complex. She's not black or white. She's a very gray character, and there's things that she does that I agree with, and there's things that she does that I disagree with, and so because of that I think that she's a very well developed character. Not exactly sure I necessarily like her, but besides that, the main love interest, I don't want to spoil it, you know, because that's half of the plot, is figuring out like who is her one true love. I didn't necessarily like her one true love, but I can appreciate their romance. My favorite character was Harry, by the way. He was my favorite. Overall, I enjoyed the ending. I like what happened to Monique in the end. I liked the book. Like I did like it, but I wasn't like, wow, that was the best book I ever read. But I liked it enough that I told my mom to read it, and she was like, yeah, that's like, it's good, but it's not great. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I would recommend it, but I'm not going to say that this is like a life-changing book. It was good. And now I started in July, the series. So I'm going to go through each of the individual books in the series, and then I'm going to give you guys my thoughts as a whole. Just a forewarning, there's going to be some spoilers because obviously when you're talking about a series, the events in the further books build on the plot of the first ones. But I'll try and keep it to the minimum, but things like relationships and stuff, like I'm gonna have to say a little bit. So yeah, minor spoilers ahead. If you haven't read it, I will put a timestamp for each of the books in the series, and then when I get to my overall thoughts. So in my overall thoughts, I won't be giving any spoilers. So if you're interested in reading the series and haven't read it yet, you can watch my review on the first book and then skip to my overall thoughts. If you haven't heard of this series, you must be living under a rock or something, because this is one of the biggest series on BookTok online. Everyone is talking about it. It's a little controversial. Some people really love it, some people really hate it. I had been hearing about this book, like it had been like a year since I joined TikTok to when I finally started reading this book, so I had a lot of preconceived notions going into the book. So if you don't know the plot, basically it is about Feyre, who is a human, and she's in their magical world. Fairies live on like the north and the humans are in the south, and she is human living with her 2 sisters and her father, and one day this wolf comes and she kills it because her family is poor and they need food. It turns out it is a fairy, and a part of the laws of the land is that she gets taken and has to live with the fairies, and it goes from there. So I don't know why, but like I had a lot of like notions of like what the book was gonna be like, and I was wrong. Like for example, I didn't know that Feyre's sisters were like actually her sisters. For some reason they were like long lost sisters based on like BookTok, but I was wrong. And another example is that the main love interest, Tamlin, a lot of people don't like him on BookTok, and because of that I didn't like him. Like I could see all the red flags. Yeah, I think because I've heard so much about the book, I was kind of just waiting for most of the book for stuff to happen. It wasn't until like the last 100 pages that I thought it got really interesting, that I was getting really into it. Yeah, the action, it was a little slow. It took a little bit of time, but once it was getting there, it was good. And it made me really excited to read the rest of the series. I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was good, but not great. Next is A Court of Mist and Fury, which is tied for my favorite book in the series. This continues the story, and this was just so much better than the first. There was way more action. You're introduced into all of these other characters who were like really cool and incredible. That was something that I found lacking in the first book. There's only like a handful of characters. In this book there's like a whole cast of characters that you meet, and they're very interesting and exciting. I think there's a lot of like Feyre goes through a lot of like, you know, really traumatizing stuff. So she's dealing with post-traumatic stress and depressing and an abusive relationship. So I think the way that it was written was really great. Not something you necessarily see a lot in fantasy, and I thought it was really well done. I love Feyre and Rhysand's, however you pronounce it. I love the relationship that develops in this novel. My only complaint is I felt like the book was a little long, and this is an issue that I have throughout the whole entire series. You're gonna hear me say it over and over again, but yeah, there was just, I just felt like it could have been pared back and I would have been happy. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like, the romance in here was just magical. Okay, now A Court of Wings and Ruin. I loved the second book, and this one was just such a letdown. Like, I'm not sure if my reading slump was because of this book or just coincided with this book, but it took me over a month to read it. I was just not into it at all. I didn't enjoy the beginning. I just wasn't into it. I won't explain too much why, because I don't want to spoil too much of it. If you guys have followed my book reviews, you will know that I'm not a huge fan of war-based novels. It seems that our single fantasy book is a war novel. Some are better than others, and I felt like this was not an exception. It almost was like all of the things that I don't like about war was in this novel. There was tons of characters that got introduced, and I found it really, and a bunch of like backstory lore that I just found very confusing. Once again, it was needlessly long, especially during the war part, and the last 150 pages were good. They like redeemed the book from being even lower of a rating than it actually was. Like, I read the last 150 pages in 2 days, and the rest of the book took me a month. So like, the ending was really, really good, but the rest of it was just like not. I honestly, like, after finishing this book, if I hadn't owned the rest of the series, I might not have continued with it. I had already owned the other 2 books, so I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna continue it. But like, it was like that much of a disappointment where I was just like, I don't know. So I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe more even 3 stars would have been more accurate. My least favorite book in the series. Next is a little novella. Well, if you can call it a novella, because it's like over 200 pages. Anyways, this is A Court of Frost and This is A Court of Frost and Starlight, and it's kind of described as like the bridge in the series, because the first 3 books are focused on Feyre, and then the 5th book, Court of Silver Flames, is Nesta, and this is kind of like the bridge in between the 2 of them. So while it sounds like that it would be a necessary part then if it was the bridge, I don't necessarily think it was necessary to be by itself. There are important elements and plot lines in the book, but I think it could have easily been added to the end of the last book and the beginning of the next book. I don't think it necessarily needed its own book. There was lots of like unnecessary fluff in the book, just to like, you know, like, because it's set at Christmas time, and I felt like, yeah, it was just like a little unnecessary. It did make me more excited for A Court of Frost and Starlight though. Sorry, A Court of Silver Flames. I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was like, it was alright. Most recently, I read this in October. If you watched October, my goal was to finish the whole entire book in the month, and I did it with a couple days to spare. Like I said, this is from Nesta's point of view, so it's kind of, and Cassian's. It's kind of like a transition. This book is tied with A Court of Mist and Fury as my favorite book in the series. I really did like it, and I felt like it really did redeem the series. I like Nesta. I definitely fell in love with her. Like, I know a lot of people didn't necessarily like her because she's like kind of a bitch in the other books, and I don't know, I have a thing for bitchy characters sometimes, like sometimes though. So I did enjoy her, really get to see her process through her grief and her trauma and her depression, and it was like, I think it was done well because it was done over a long period of time and it wasn't like a linear journey, which I think is pretty accurate to what it's actually like to go through it. I will say that sometimes it could be a little cheesy though, with like all this focus on like meditation and like exercising and all this stuff. Like, I think it's great to show that those things can actually help someone's mental health, but I think it's like an oversimplified and happy version of like dealing with mental health, because like not everyone could do just that. Anyways, I thought it was a little corny at times, a little too like meditation is great type of thing. Besides that, I love her and Cassian's relationship, the romance, and it's just like chef's kiss in this book. And I also like the friendships that are built in the book between Emery and Gwen, who are like side characters who were introduced. I think they're some of my favorite side characters in the whole entire novel, and I just love the relationship that the girls had. This book is so long. It's 750 pages. I honestly think this book could have been like 500 pages and I would have been happy. It's so long. And not much actually happens plot wise. There's the blood rite that happens near like the end of the book, and it gave me like Hunger Games vibes. I was totally into it. I loved it, but the like final conflict I felt like was really rushed. Wasn't really like satisfied by it. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, and clearly there's gonna be more books in this series, but like I don't know where it's gonna go necessarily. Like, I'm definitely gonna read the other books in the series, but yeah, the ending was just like, it was an okay ending for like a really good book. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. So my overall thoughts on the series. 1, I think the books are just unneedlessly long. I'm gonna compare this a lot to A Throne of Glass, which I did a video talking about it. I'll link it down below. If not, I'll link down below my blog post. But that series is also written by Sarah J. Maas, which is the same author. And it's funny because that series is actually written before this one. I think near the end the books were kind of coming out, but like the first half of the books were out before. So I'm going to compare the two because of the same author. They're both like fantasy books with like fairies, and like just I think it makes sense for me to compare the two because it helps really explain my thoughts on the series. So I saw someone on TikTok once compare that Throne of Glass is plot based and ACOTAR is character based, and I 100% agree with that. So plot based is that the plot is the main driver and the main part of the book, versus character driven, the main part of the book is the character development. And there's neither is wrong, like either one is okay. It's mainly like personal preference. Some people prefer plot, some people prefer character. I have realized that I prefer plot. So which is why I think I like Thorn of Glass better than A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like I said, it's very character based. There's plot and things that happen, but it's way more centered on the character development of Feyre and Nesta. So because of that, I just found that sometimes it could get a little boring. Yeah, I sometimes just got like bored because I was like, when's something gonna happen? So it's like these things happening, like, you know what I mean? I was just like, when is something gonna happen? It's also funny though, because even though A Court of Thorns and Roses is character based, I think I like the characters better in Thorn of Glass, but that's just personal preference. I also found that the books were just needlessly long for like not a lot of stuff happening. I think each of the books could easily be 100 to 150 pages shorter and I would be happy. And like, I don't necessarily hate long books for the sake of being long. I think if a book has stuff going on, it makes sense for it to be long, but I felt like I would have been happier if they were shorter. I think the story could have been told in a more concise manner. Maybe this is my like inner PR coming out in me, where I'm just like, say it like just be concise. Okay, that's just like one of the things I was feeling while reading the series. Yeah, and I just didn't feel as attached to the characters in these books. Like overall, I would say I would give this, I think my overall rating like perfectly reflects it, that like Throne of Glass had some issues, but I loved it despite of it. A Court of Thorns and Roses had some issues and it took away from my enjoyment. So I gave Thorn of Glass 5 out of 5 stars. I would give Court of Thorns and Roses, so far, because it's not complete yet, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a good series. If you love fantasy, you'll probably enjoy it, but it's not the best fantasy I've ever read. There's my hot take. I know some people love this series. I mean, some people don't. It's pretty controversial, but yeah, it was alright. And there you go, guys. We are now up to date. I know in past videos I've given you guys a TBR, and honestly, I don't really have much of one. I'll show you what I'm reading right now. I am currently reading Codename Verite. I think that's how you say that word. Verite. I'm just gonna say Verite. That's how you would say it in French. By Elizabeth Wen. Yes, I don't know why I chose this, because after I finished ACOTAR, I was like, I think I need a break from fantasy and heavy series, and for some reason my brain was like, read a World War II book. I don't know why, because World War II books can be really hit or miss for me. I don't know. I think I was just like, let me read historical fiction, because historical fiction is usually right up my alley. But yeah, anyways, this one is about two like female spies. Well, one girl's a pilot, one girl is a spy during World War II. Yes, and it definitely took me, actually, I won't go into my thoughts yet, but yes, this is what I'm reading right now. It's taken me a bit to get into it, but I'm now into it. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. My goal is to read this book and 2 other books. My goal used to be 4 books a month. Now I'm trying to be a little bit more realistic. I'm probably gonna stick to standalones and also try and read shorter books for the rest of the year, because I am 10 bucks behind my 2020 goal, 2021 goal. It's 2021. I'm 10 bucks behind my reading goal, and I don't think I'm going to end up finishing it. I'm currently at 32 books. My goal is 50. I don't think I'm gonna get to 50 this year, but I'm hoping, you know, at least if I can read some shorter books, I can kind of at least bring myself a little closer to my goal. So yeah, guys, no TBR. Next time I do a book reviews, I guess it'll just be a surprise. I don't know, I guess it's November now. It's mid-November. I'll probably wait and do a November and December books together, and eventually probably do a 2020 books review. Can't believe 2021. I keep on forgetting it's 2021. 2020 didn't count, right? Anyways, guys, that is my update, my reading update. I have not written, I think I have a book review for Evelyn, Hugo, and the Tattooist, like a blog post. So I'll link that down below. I will be doing my ACOTAR blog post soon. That way you guys can always refer back to it. I have all of my book reviews on my blog, so if you ever are like curious, like, oh, what's Leah's thought on X book, you can just like search it up on my blog and find the book review. But yeah, guys, that is it for today's video. Let me know in the comments if you read any of these books, and if you did, what were your thoughts on these books? Do you agree or disagree with my thoughts? And let me know if you have any book recommendations for me. Like I said, I don't have much of a TBR. So if you have any good standalones, I've been really wanting romance. Maybe that's what I'll read next. I'll do a romance book next. But yeah, let me know your recommendations down in the comments below. Like this video if you want to see more book related content from me, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any new videos. That is it, guys. I'm gonna take off this makeup and sit down and watch Formula 1 and chill out for the rest of the afternoon. Okay, guys, that is it. I'll see you in another video super soon. Bye!